Good evening, members, and welcome to this extraordinary meeting of the full council. I'm Councillor Tony Vickers, Chairman of West Berkshire Council. The meeting is being live streamed via YouTube, so members of the public are able to follow proceedings. Council members are present in the council chamber for this meeting and may vote as they are present. Any members of council who are in attendance remotely will be entitled to speak and ask questions when invited to do so by myself, but will not be able to vote. The officers in attendance are the Chief Executive, Joseph Holmes, the Executive Director for Adult Social Care, Paul Coe, the Executive Director for Children and Family Services, Anne-Marie Dodds, and the Executive Director for Place, Claire Lawrence. Sarah Clark, the Monitoring Officer and Interim Executive Director for Resources, will be the legal advisor to the meeting. And I'm assisted by Darius Zarazel, the clerk to the meeting, and by Sam Chiverton, who will be the Zoom host. And I welcome any honorary alderman in attendance. Before we start this evening's meeting, I would like to take the opportunity to remind members that we are subject to the Council's Code of Conduct, which requires us to uphold certain standards, importantly including respect. Members across the chamber may not always agree with one another, but I would ask that in our disagreements, we endeavour to always be respectful of others' views. And I would also like to ask that any members of the public in attendance do not interrupt the proceedings, and please refrain from approaching councillors unless you are invited to do so. And during the meeting, when a motion, and there is only one motion on the agenda tonight, has been proposed and seconded, I will ask the monitoring officer to conduct the vote. Well, it won't be by a show of hands tonight. I think I'm expecting it might be a named vote, but that would be the norm. Moving to agenda item 1, apologies for absence.
Thank you, Chairman. Sorry, I can confirm that we have received apologies from councillors Caroline Culver, Janine Lewis, who I believe is attending online, Councillor Nick Carter, Councillor Phil Barnett, who I also believe is attending online, Councillor Nigel Foote, Anthony Armitage and Jane Langford, also attending online. We've also received apologies from Honorary Alderman Graham Bridgman, Paul Bryant, Adrian Edwards, Rick Jones, Molly Locke, Hilary Cole and Andrew Rolls. I don't know if there are any further apologies from the floor.
There are none that I can see being offered. Moving to agenda item 2, declarations of interest. Yes, Councillor Sumner.
Thank you, Chairman. I suspect most of us have been contacted by residents for the conversation that's about to take place before us. And I suspect, therefore, most of us will be raising our hands to the fact that we should be declaring an interest on that basis, Chairman.
Absolutely right. I'm sure that's the case with all of us, members. I will take that on block. Are there any other declarations of interest not related to, I think it was the Pinson's Hill, primarily coming from that direction, wasn't it? That was the only one I've had. Ah, yes. Hello. Yeah, Councillor Taylor.
Yeah, I'm not sure whether I need to declare this, but I am the chairman of Tarles Parish Council and Tarles Parish Councillor. And as a council, we have always been are opposed to the development at Pinson's Hill. So I thought I ought to make that point clear.
Councillor Taylor, I think there are a number of us that are also on town and parish councils. Councillor Gaines?
Chairman, I think we've also been lobbied from Emborne on RSA 25.
I'm not sure we have recently. I mean, I've been constantly lobbied. Have you? I don't think that's gone to everybody, because I did ask another member if they'd had it and they didn't seem to know. But okay, we've all been lobbied on that. Any others? Yes, Councillor Dick.
Thank you. There's similar to Pinson's Hill, there's an issue in Cold Ash with new housing and lobbying there connected.
Not been lobbied by that, but I will note that. Councillor Dick. I should also note that I have an interest in the North Wessex Downs. It's a pretty standard declaration, but particularly relevant, I think, with the agenda tonight.
Since we're all saying we've been lobbied, a lot of us have been lobbied in Thatcham as well. So just to complete the set, so to speak.
I think a lot of you will have done. Okay.
Sarah going to rule on all of this. It's being recorded, so.
It's been recorded. No, we don't need to rule on that. You've all declared an interest, and I'm assuming you're all intending to use your votes tonight. Correct? Right. The third item, and the one and only item on our extraordinary agenda tonight, is the adoption of the West Berkshire Local Plan Review 2023 to 2041. And it's at paragraph 2 on your agenda papers. And there are 7 parts of the recommendation. But I would please ask members to be aware that this is of very great significance to the entire district. It only happens every few years. And I'm proposing the following speech timings to be amended. I will need the support of a show of hands of members present, but the proposal is that the proposer of the motion will get 10 minutes, the seconder of the motion will get 5 minutes, the leader of the main opposition group will get 6 minutes, and the leader of minority group will get 4 minutes. That is a departure from the standard timings. Do I have members' agreement if by a show of hands? That's, oh, I need a seconder for that? Sorry, anybody like to second me on? Denise, Councillor Gaines, thank you very much. We have that seconded. I'm proposing it from the chair. Show of hands, please. Yes, that's unanimous, carried. So, may I invite Councillor Denise Gaines to formally move the recommendation as contained in the report?
Thank you, Chair. Can I move that motion along with the 7 recommendations? Thank you.
May I ask for a seconder?
Chair, I'm happy to second that motion and will reserve my right to speak.
Thank you, Councillor Pemberton. Councillor Gaines, would you like to propose the motion?
Thank you, Chairman. I will say this yet again and make no apologies for doing so. This is not our plan. This is a plan conceived and submitted by the previous Conservative administration just 34 days before they lost control of this council. Interestingly, the inspector made a comment on his report about the speed of submission so soon after the Reg 19 consultation. There is an old saying, which I believe started as a joke somewhere in the midst of time, that if I wanted to get to Dublin, I wouldn't start from here. That is exactly how this administration sees this local plan review. But we don't have the luxury of starting again. We are here. I'm asking members to vote with me on these recommendations in this report, not because it's what they want to do, as I feel sure many will be reluctant to do so, but because the alternative will be so much more catastrophic. During our election campaign, we promised the residents of Thatcham that we would do everything possible to stop this plan, and we have. We wrote and lobbied the previous Conservative and the current Labour Secretaries of State, firstly to get the plan withdrawn and later to stop it going to examination. We have been and continue to be directed to proceed. We've been thwarted in our efforts at every turn, and we have now run out of options. The report clearly states in para 1.2 that we are still under the direction of that Secretary of State's letters, the 2 I have in my hand. But we promise you, our residents, right across West Berkshire, that if this plan is adopted tonight, I, along with all members of this administration and council officers, will do everything in our power to get you the best possible outcome of any and all new developments detailed in this plan. Now, the opposition will try to tell you this evening that if we had not tried to withdraw the plan, we would not have the additional sites. Not totally true. After the Conservatives rushed to submit the plan, the inspector had a number of preliminary questions that required a response. which meant the council had to carry out further work. Planning staffing issues at the time caused this process to be delayed, even prior to the change in administration. Also, additional information which became available during the examination process required additional site allocation. The plan period was delayed due to both our withdrawal request, I admit, changes during the examination, and the initial delay for inspectors' questions. So due to timing, a further 2 years have been added to the plan's lifetime during that period. Our housing allocation numbers were, and still are for the moment, 515 per year. However, the inspector has requested that an additional 1,430 dwellings be added to the housing figures in this plan. Some dwellings to make up the shortfall, but others to make the local plan sound. The examination was held between May 2024 and October 2024. In order for the plan to progress to adoption, the inspector had to find the plan sound. This required it to be positively prepared, justified, effective, and consistent with national policy. During the examination period, the inspector detailed 102 main modifications to the original plan. These changes range from terminology, additional protection for the North Wessex national landscape, and changes to the wordings in whole areas of the plan, which he suggested needed amending. One such major change is SP 17. Interestingly, as submitted, SP 17, which deals specifically with North East Thatcham sites, was not effective, justified, or consistent with national policy, according to his report. The plan would not have been found sound without the additional 1,000 houses in the North East Thatcham site that the inspector suggested were added. Why is that? Because National Planning Policy Framework, NPPF, expectations are based on the most efficient use of land being met. And this was not the case in the plan. It's difficult to believe that the Conservative administration didn't know this, as their original research, Thatcham Strategic Growth Study, was for up to 2,500 dwellings on those sites, not the 1,500 that were eventually put forward. The inspector also required during the examination a main modification to SP1, the Eastern Urban Area. This was to ensure an effective and justified approach. Due to flood risk and the risks around AWE areas, this limited the sites available. The site at Pincers Hill was identified by the inspector to meet not just the additional period of the plan, but also to assist in the delivery of the spatial strategy for the Eastern Urban Area. I promised the residents of this site that I will do everything I can to ensure the development has input from them whenever possible. Excuse me. Let me return to North East Thatcham site and SP 17, now confusingly SP 14 in the latest version of the plan due to some deletions. The inspector directed that additional modifications to the strategic policy SP 17 needs to be made. These changes added greater restrictions on what developers can and cannot do. A new section referring to the master plan and design code has been added. This instructs that the council will lead and coordinate the master plan process in collaboration with site promoters, but more importantly, with the relevant town, parish councils, the community and other stakeholders. The supplementary planning document, SPD, should be prepared and adopted prior to any planning application being submitted. The council should intend to adopt this SPD within 12 months of the local plan being adopted. This SPD will allow us to work with the community on education, healthcare provision, green spaces, employment space, but also design, types and sizes of the homes that will be built there. If the recommendations are accepted to members, then we have plans to set up a residents forum. This is in addition to the stakeholder involvement. This will ensure that there will be a true reflection of local want and need. I used the words much more catastrophic earlier. If we do not adopt this plan this evening, then West Berkshire District is without the policies detailed in the plan. So what? We will have no valid plan. It will be a free-for-all for developers. We will immediately compelled to meet the 1,070 dwelling figures to be built every year to 2041, which the Labour government has introduced. We will have no control over where developers submit applications to build. It's extremely likely that we will get planning applications from all the sites already in the local plan review as they've been identified as deliverable. We are likely to get poor quality, speculative applications, and we'll have to find good reasons to refuse based on the 1,070 houses we need to find each year. There is really a significant cost associated with appeals if or when members or officers refuse applications. There will not be the control over design and efficiency of build that is currently in the local plan review. We'll have no master plan for North East Thatcham. So when the application is submitted for those sites, which it will be, we have no control over shaping areas such as infrastructure, health, education provision or employment. We can ask planning officers to negotiate, but without the safety of the parish, town and community involvement and the backing of the details in this plan, there is no guarantee of success. We would expect the Secretary of State to approve the plan if it's not adopted. So with the administration costs and delay to this count to do so. Also be aware that tonight MHCLG are online and watching us. Good evening, MHCLG. Local plans are supposed to be an innovative and exciting process to shape our district's future, allowing us the ability to craft policies and documents to enhance our urban and rural areas while safeguarding our countryside, managing our growth where we want it, but instead they're very often bun fights for developers to get their sites included in the housing allocation process. Government is complicit in this process by dictating housing numbers in various random processes. It wouldn't be right to present this report without mentioning the excellent work that officers from across the council, but especially the planning team, have achieved in putting together the 24 strategic policies and over 40 development management policies that make up this plan. This is the planning design document for our district's future. This local plan review does major on site locations, as we know, and I'm certainly not attempting to minimise the strength of feeling about those sites by both our residents and fellow members. But the positive benefits to West Berkshire and our residents of having this plan in place are the wealth of policies within it. There are policies that cover protection of our green and blue spaces, policies to ensure design quality, flood risk, design, energy and air quality, rules regarding transport and affordable houses, and much more. This plan cannot be changed. We know it is far from perfect, but this is the only plan we have. Let's make it work. Please support the recommendation in this report. Thank you, Chairman.
I believe the seconder wishes to reserve his right. Is that right?
Yeah, that's right, Chairman.
I heard that. Thank you very much. I will therefore now open the debate to the floor. Councillor Jeffrey.
Mr. Chairman, thank you. Council, thank you. After the Second World War, the post-war government introduced planning across our country. And do you know, planning works. I don't know how many other people have done this, but have you ever driven from the French border as far south as Gibraltar on the Mediterranean coast of Spain? You'll find adverts, tower blocks, bungalows, hovels, hotels, right the way from the French border, right the way down to Gibraltar. Planning isn't perfect. This local plan isn't perfect. My golly, it's not perfect, but it's better than not having a plan at all. Let me give you some kind of feeling about what will happen if we don't adopt this plan. What is the alternative? It ain't pretty. Planning by default. Planning when a developer thinks he can get away with some kind of development and has not got the control of a local plan that will make him work to particular standards. Because we are in danger of not having a valid local plan to resist them, we need to make sure that we do adopt this plan tonight. Council, I will tell you now quite categorically, I do not like this plan, But I know without the protection of the plan that we will get planning by appeal. We will get a West Berkshire that has to produce more houses immediately than we do if we adopt this plan. Yes, this plan is flawed, but I urge every member of council to please vote to adopt this plan because it is the best we're going to get at this time. Thank you.
Councillor McKinnon.
Thank you very much, Chairman. Members, did you know that the Labour government had to withdraw the winter fuel payment from pensioners last autumn? Because if they hadn't, there would have been a run in the pound. And the government then couldn't afford to give away £20 billion on overseas climate aid and give away sovereign UK territory. You knew that, right? That's what we were told back in September. But now Keir Starmer says he's fixed the foundations of the economy and can now restore the winter fuel allowance for 3/4 of pensioners. It's not a U-turn because they're getting hammered in the polls. It's because he's fixed the foundations. Do you believe Keir Starmer when he says that, folks? No. Neither do I. But that statement's still more credible than the Liberal Democrat promise at the 2023 election to fix the local plan. That was the local plan submitted by the Conservatives with only 1,500 homes in North East Thatcham and no extra allocations of homes to Pinsent Hill or in Cold Ash. First off, it didn't need fixing, and even if it did, it had already been submitted to the inspector. No action was possible to change it. We've just heard that from Councillor Gaines's own mouth right now. They should have known that. They did know it, and they lied to the voters about it. Or they should have known about it and are merely breathtakingly incompetent. I'll leave it to you guys as to which of those two hats you're comfortable wearing.
Chairman, I object to the word lie. I object to the word lie within the focus of the code of conduct. That has been put out here as possibly this side has lied. I object to it.
Chairman, I'll say I've not named any individual councillor as lying. I'm saying the Liberal Democrats as a party lied at the election. And I have to say to members opposite, I'm going to be committing the crime tonight of speaking whilst Conservative. I'm going to be saying things that you don't like, but you're going to have to lump it. I've not named any individual councillor. I haven't called you a liar, Councillor Brooks, and I never would. You're a lovely man. But the Liberal Democratic Party lied at the election. Or, let me finish, please.
No, I won't take that, Chairman. I won't take that, Councillor McKinnon. A collective lie is equally damaging and disrespectful as an individual one. Thank you.
If you'd let me finish, please, Chairman. Either they lied or they are breathtakingly incompetent. I'm happy to say that they are breathtakingly incompetent and not liars. Are we happy with that, Chairman? Okay, strap yourselves in, folks. It gets worse. You will hear, and in fact you've already heard from Councillor Gaines that the last Conservative administration rushed the local plan through before the election. That will be news to Councillor Sumner and Councillor Macro and Councillor Vickers, who spent 3.5 years working cross-party to put it together. You've heard tonight that it was rushed through because it was submitted shortly before the election, an election we were bound to lose. It was in the bag for the Liberals, right? Why wait until the election and let the voters decide? Leaving aside the dripping arrogance and entitlement that it must take to presume how voters are going to cast their vote. That's not how this works, folks. We were elected in 2019 for 4 years, and we served 4 years. We worked on the local plan all of that time with them, cross-party. During our time in office, we were told from about 18 months in that we were going to lose the next election and shouldn't make decisions with long-term consequences for the district. Well, we're well past halfway of their term now. How does that work for Ridgeway Council, which is going to last for at least 30 years? I mean, we do support it now, Councillor Brooks, but you've already showed us with the local plan that that means diddly squat. We might change our minds with 2 minutes to go. Sound familiar? Speaking of changing our minds with 2 minutes to go, when it came to the vote to submit this local plan review in December 22, a week before the vote, Councillor Vickers told the world that they would not vote against it. That's the Liberal Democrat planning expert, their planning spokesman. He knows what he's talking about when it comes to planning. So why then did the Liberal Democrats, and strap yourselves in for this, guys, vote against a week later? Well, I think that someone, maybe the then leader of the opposition, who knows, someone tapped Councillor Vickers on the shoulder and said, hold on, mate, there's an election in May. Think about Thatcham. Think about Bucklebury. They didn't care about residents. They just cared about votes. And look, fair play, boys and girls. It worked. Well done. It's been a while since the good people of Cold Ash and Bucklebury sent a Liberal back here. Congratulations, Councillor Reid. Congratulations, Councillor Codling. It will be very interesting indeed to see how you two vote this evening. But the problem with crazy promises, as Homer Simpson discovered when he was elected Sanitation Commissioner of Springfield, is that the voters expect you to deliver them. It didn't end well for Homer, and it's not going to end well for the Liberal Democrats. We know that after winning the election, the Liberals were in a panic about how to proceed. We know that they know their election promises were undeliverable. We know their ignorance about what to do next, and that their prime consideration was how they were perceived by voters, not the best interests of residents. And after 7 months of dither and delay, in December 23, they arrived at the stunt to pretend to want to withdraw the whole plan, knowing the then Conservative government would intervene to stop its withdrawal, which is exactly what happened, and allowed the Liberal Democrats to revert to factory settings, default mode, and blame the Tories. It's such a lovely comfort blanket, isn't it? Such a comfortable place for a party with no coherent unifying principles and ideas at all. It's funny because it's true. So the inspection process was delayed until 2024, running up against the Labour government's doubling of West Berkshire housing targets. Not so much a comfort blanket now, an all-in-one sleeping bag, allowing you to blame the Tories and the Labour. It's amazing to see you guys in action. And that likely prompted the inspector to impose the extra 1,000 homes in Pinsents and designate other sites like Cold Ash as housing sites. They know that if they hadn't delayed the inspection process for 7 months, these amendments wouldn't have been made. They know the responsibility for Pinsents Hill and Cold Ash and North East Thatcham lies squarely at their door. Their cynical politicking and the risible way that you've dealt with this issue since 2022. You have to look those residents in the eye today and say sorry. Shame on you.
Councillor Abs.
Not sure I had to follow that really, to be honest. Anyway, I'll have a go. Have we started? Do we want to put the timer up then? There we go. Guys, local plans can take a decade to come through it, as we know. In that time, we can easily change the ideology in Westminster, which is what happened. Ever since Angela Rayner imposed Labour's new targets on the UK population in July 2024, we have had one planning application after another where the lack of 5-year housing supply is used as justification for approval. In many cases, officers suggest approval for only that reason. The tilted balance is engaged. It's worth noting, of course, that Angela Rayner's constituency saw a significant reduction in their building targets. In fact, 19 out of 20 areas with significantly reduced housing targets are Labour constituencies. In London, the one that's shared with the Conservatives, number, I think it's 3 in the list, they saved 18,000 homes. No wonder we have so much pressure in the rest of the areas. Even at the appeal that's ongoing in this chamber, starting again tomorrow for Eagle Quarter, it's brought in for a reason why permission should be granted for that. Our decision tonight will weigh heavily, and the inspector is likely to be lobbied by King's Counsel tomorrow morning if we do not approve this plan. It's not something that might happen. It will start happening tomorrow morning. During several WAP meetings recently, there's things that have been rejected, things that normally be rejected, suddenly down as recommended for approval. So why? We've heard the numbers. It's because we're forced into 1,070 homes instead of 515. It's completely artificial. Is it a wonder at all? We have all these sites coming into the local plan that will harm communities. Also, let's step back and look at how we get these in the first place. And that's all to do with, we have a developer-led local plan. We don't have a local plan that residents want, we have a developer one. So when our Labour MP in Reading West says she's against Pinsent Hill, I find myself struggling. Her bosses are the ones imposing mandatory targets. What has she managed to do for Pinsent Hill? Reading, number 18 in the list, they got a reduction, but not Pinsent Hill, not Reading West. So if we approve tonight, we will hurt whole communities. I think we all agree on that. Pinsent Hill and North Thatcham being two of the biggest. If we don't, We hurt West Berkshire as a whole and the same communities, by the way. If we adopt a local plan, we have some measure of control back. Therefore, given Sandalford as an example of it taking 20 years to get a spade in the ground, we've got a chance to get rid of this government and move on. Maybe they'll change the targets. Maybe they'll change the system like was suddenly imposed on us. I'll reserve my final decision on which way to vote until I've heard from others. Whichever way I do vote, it's simply judging which I think harms the least. Thank you.
Councillor Macro.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. First of all, I'd like to clarify, yes, I was involved in internal discussions that led up to the local plan. But throughout those discussions, I opposed the major housing allocations in Thatcham. I opposed the housing allocations in Thiel, and I opposed the proposal of at that time to put Pinson's Hill into the plan. But going back, the council's core strategy included in the statement that Thiel will remain a vibrant village, which means a distinct identity and sense of a community. The lakeside development has planning permission to provide 350 homes. If this development goes ahead, Thiel would need to undergo a period of consolidation to provide an opportunity for facilities and services to be upgraded. Well, Mr. Chairman, development of that site has started. However, another site for 104 homes, just opposite in fact, was allocated in the Housing Site Allocations DPD, ignoring that statement in the core strategy. Development of that site has started. There's been no chance for those facilities and services to be upgraded. However, here we are proposing to allocate another 2 sites totaling 100 homes. Even worse, both those sites are at risk of flooding. Both are at risk of groundwater and surface water flooding. 28% of one site and 95% of the other site are in flood zone 2. Altogether, the sites being built out and those allocated in this plan would increase the size of Thiel Village by 1/3, with no enhancement of facilities and services. Thiel has already provided far more than its fair share of new housing for the district. And for the reasons I've stated, I cannot therefore support the adoption of this plan, but it's been foisted on us by the previous Conservative administration and the previous Conservative government.
Councillor Marsh.
Thank you, Chair. I have my, I think I'll have 5, but I think I'm only entitled to 4, Chair. Local plan or no local plan, the history of planning and development in West Berkshire in recent years is not especially auspicious. Just take a look around Newbury. Market Street, 232 flats to rent, described in the council's own conservation area report as large monolithic blocks, of which a dozen or so are affordable, the council having virtually given away the site and rental income in perpetuity to the developer. Bond Riverside, the Conservatives' inexplicable and ultimately doomed obsession with building flats on the football ground at the expense of the superior Faraday Plaza scheme. Kennett Centre, the council seems perfectly content with 0 affordable, let alone social housing. Lots more flats to rent privately, though. Sandalford, despite this one being in the local plan, council officers rightly opposed Sandalford Park East. The government approved it anyway. As for Sandalford Park West, well, that was voted through last year by an unholy alliance of Tory and Lib Dem councillors, ignoring the views of residents and in direct contravention not only of the current local plan, but of strategic policies 1, 10, 11 and 23 in this new one. The racecourse, at last a sustainable site with its own railway station, but while the building continues, there's still no sign of the infrastructure that the developer promised. Never mind, though, this new local plan says, where necessary, the phasing of development will be linked to infrastructure provision. That's all right then. So all this raises the question, will this local plan enable us to do a better job for our residents in the future? Had the 2 old parties chosen to work together in December 2022 on these issues, rather than engage in the kind of political point scoring we're still witnessing, we might not be in this sorry situation. Between the pair of them, what have we got? 2,500 new properties in North Thatcham, a town that lacks the infrastructure for its existing population. This massive overdevelopment got barely a mention in the recent Thatcham North East by-election, with the exception of the Green Party candidate, suggesting that the two main contenders seemed oddly reluctant to talk about it. Now, to get to the gist of this, we're told we need a local plan to stop development by appeal. I don't buy this necessarily. We have a local plan now. And what's been happening? North Newbury, development by appeal. Sandalford Park East, development by appeal. In all likelihood, the Eagle Quarter, development by appeal. The biggest threat to the environment is the Labour government's planning and infrastructure bill, which threatens species extinction and irreversible habitat loss. Labour is proposing a cash to trash model for developers. Pay up and do what you like. Now, what protection does the local plan before us give our much loved environment here in West Berkshire against this threat? It might even make things worse. Developers can deliver a 10% net gain by, quote, on-site and off-site biodiversity enhancements. So don't worry, we'll drive all the badgers, brown hares and skylarks from Sandalford, but we'll pay to plant a few trees somewhere else. On biodiversity, on providing desperately needed social and affordable housing, on zero carbon, there's always a get-out clause for developers. Looking at the various maps, you'd never imagine that the strategic policies in this document say development sites should be done on sites of lower environmental value, on previously developed land, conserving and enhancing the natural environment, preventing the loss of green spaces, extending wildlife corridors, providing habitat connectivity. Does anyone imagine that this local plan will enhance the natural environment at, for example, Pinson's Hill, or indeed North Thatcham, or indeed Sandalford? My biggest objection to this plan remains, as it always has, that it relies on building two huge developments on greenfield sites that would be largely reliant on private cars. They're not green, they're not sustainable, they don't protect or enhance diversity, and above all, they are incompatible with the very policies presented elsewhere in this local plan. For that reason, I've come to the conclusion that our residents will be better off without it. I voted against it in 2022. Thank you, Chair. I voted against it in 2023, and I'll be voting against it this evening. Thank you very much, Chair.
Councillor Taylor.
Thank you, Chair. The inclusion of the land east of Pinson's Lane, till 13 in West Berkshire's local plan is of great concern to me. Development of this site has been repeatedly refused over many years. It was excluded from our existing and approved local plan due to traffic-related concerns. The residents of my ward and well beyond have responded to previous planning applications, appeals and proposals to allocate this site in local plans with thousands of objections. Over 3,000 individuals objected at the last planning application. 10 days ago, a new petition was launched, which as at 9 a.m. this morning had almost 1,700 verified signatures. Why do people care so much about preserving this land in its entirety? Its beauty, wildlife, tranquility, and its close proximity to the urban areas of Tylers, Calcutta and Thiel are part of the answer. There are also concerns relating to a lack of infrastructure to support increasing population and the ability to easily access this site. Traffic congestion on the single access road from the A4 is commonplace, particularly at weekends and bank holidays, and traffic has to run past the Sainsbury's Retail Park, IKEA, Dunelm, an office park, a warehouse park, a fire and rescue centre, and shortly a new 50-unit care home immediately opposite the site at Pinson's Manor. I should add that the Pinson's Manor site is a brownfield development that I supported and that there were no objections to at all. The proposed local plan also extends the Tyler settlement boundary to include the Till 13 site. In the past, there would have been discussions with affected parish councils before any proposals to extend settlements boundaries. No such discussions ever took place with Tylers Parish Council. It came as a shock when the boundary change was included in the local plan, so as to place the Till 13 site within the settlement boundary. Tylers Parish Council has objected to this change, which was made only so as to make the development more likely. I am aware of the risks of not adopting this plan today, and I support the need for more affordable housing in our region, but I would be betraying the trust of the residents I represent if I supported this plan as it's currently presented to us. Over the last week, I've knocked on many doors, toured the pubs, clubs and cafes of my ward, speaking to many residents. I've also observed social media communication and have not found a single person who supports development at this site. I urge councillors to think carefully about how and where we build, and if we genuinely believe that this plan is flawed, as I believe many of us do, we should seek to further amend it before approval. Thank you.
Councillor Vicky Poole.
Thank you, Councillor Cottingham. Thank you, Chair. Before I begin, may I ask, in show of hands, how many of us were born and raised in West Berkshire? A handful? Lovely. And how many of us still live in the same village that we were born? Almost none of us. Right, there we go. So what we're really talking about here is national migration. People move to where the opportunities are. Better jobs, better schools, better services. And with that comes the need for new homes. But building homes must go hand in hand with local infrastructure. We cannot approve housing developments without serious thoughts for the impacts on schools, healthcare, transport and other community amenities. That's where the local plan comes in. It's not just a document, it's a framework that allows the council to manage growth. It gets to say what gets built, where it gets built and how. It offers control, and I look at Councillor Abbs right now, control over the number and type and nature of the new homes that we have in West Berkshire. It's like we are on the same train of thought, Councillor Abbs. But let's be clear, this is not a plan that we designed. As Councillor Gaines mentioned, it was a plan that we inherited from the previous administration, who had fast-tracked it, didn't mention it, Councillor McKinnon, fast-tracked and conducted only a narrow review of potential development sites, favouring areas historically strong for the Liberal Democrats. Some of the proposed sites have sparked real concern from residents, and rightly so. People are worried about the strain already stretched on, the strain already on stretched schools, GPs and dental services.
To order, Chairman. I believe the officers have just been accused of political gerrymandering in favour of the Conservatives. I wonder if Councillor Poole might want to withdraw that remark.
I don't recall that Councillor Poole mentioned officers.
Selection of sites in the local plan review which selected Liberal Democrat strongholds, Chairman.
Still has to be approved by members.
Okay, then she accused the previous administration of political gerrymandering. I said the Liberal Democrat campaign machine was lying, but that's terrible. But this is okay, is it? Come on.
Continue, Councillor Poole.
Thank you, Chair. Where was I now? These concerns are valid and have been raised through the proper channels. I'm continuing where I finished, Councillor McKinnon. Thank you. Many of us here were elected based on a mandate to challenge this plan, and challenge it we did, as Councillor McKinnon noted. The result was that we ended up getting more houses to deliver and not fewer. That's the reality that councils are facing across the country, sadly. And in my view, this is a top-down, target-driven approach from the Labour government that undermines local democratic decision-making. Under the leadership of our Deputy Leader and the Portfolio for Housing and Planning, Denise Gaines, we've now taken the local plan through a review process, a really stringent review process. The officers have worked tirelessly to strengthen policies on environmental protection, affordable housing, social value, and improvements that can deliver benefits across the district. I've examined every option, listened to the residents, and I share many of their concerns. I cannot fully support this plan, but it does give us one crucial thing, and that thing is control. Control to ensure that these homes, if they are built, they're built our way, with our standards and with our communities in mind. Thank you, Chair.
Councillor Codley.
Thank you, Chairman. I object to this plan. In part, my election to this council 2 years ago was based firmly on the commitment to try and stop this local plan progressing in its form. But our hands have been tied by process and government forcing us to continue, which included riding roughshod over and disregarding the legally adopted Cold Ash Neighbourhood Development Plan and ignoring what the people we represent really want. The background and framework of the plan is good, excellent in fact. For example, green infrastructure, the response to climate change and drive towards net zero. And I thank the officers for all their hard work in the preparation. But what the majority of residents will notice is where the houses are built. So I specifically object to the housing allocations. To my mind, there has been no proper thought through plan as to where the houses are allocated. This whole process has been made worse by the inspector adding in sites as major modifications. For instance, the site in Cold Ash, CA12. This will put more pressure on the services in Thatcham and the villages to the north, on top of the 2,500 houses planned for North East Thatcham. Rather than pausing the process to call for more sites, only those identified in an out-of-date HELA were added to the plan. We should have had the option to look again at where we might develop our villages and help them remain viable. We cannot preserve our villages in aspect. We need a plan to help them grow sustainably and keep our schools, shops and pubs open. My gut instinct is to vote against this plan. However, I'm a realist. We need a plan. Without one, it would be worse. But sites identified in the plan are not a done deal. They will be scrutinised and they will not be approved if they are not right. By approving this local plan, we still have some control. Again, I mentioned the CA12 in Cold Ash. This has previously been refused and at appeal. And as recently as March, the site was reassessed and is now recognised as being in flood zones 2 and 3, totally inappropriate for development. A very presumptive planning application is already submitted for this site and has received strong objection from the Environment Agency and 132 individual objections. I will continue to object to this site being developed. Where plans are approved, we will work to get the services in place and we will need to work with our villages, parish councillors and developers to provide sensible sustainability in our rural area. I will, after all, be voting for this plan.
Councillor Cottingham.
Thank you, Chair, for giving me the opportunity to speak on this very important matter, not just for the residents of Thatcham, but for all residents of West Berkshire. Firstly, I would like to give a bit of context to why I'll be voting in favour of the report in tonight's agenda. Since moving into West Berkshire back in September of 1988, I've witnessed significant change in its landscape. Thatcham has experienced significant housing development in this period. However, without the equivalent increase in the infrastructure to support this growth. Whilst campaigning back in 2023 election in the Thatcham Central Ward, I estimate approximately 90% of residents I canvassed were against the proposed plan to build 1,500 homes in North East Thatcham. Indeed, I campaigned, if elected, to do everything possible to withdraw the local plan. I'm now somewhat disillusioned on how the process has played out over the last 2 years, since we, the Lib Dems, took control of West Berkshire Council. I now find myself voting in favour of the local plan. I somewhat naively thought as a locally elected member, I could make a material difference to the plan. I'm sorry to say that I was wrong. I still feel that building the volume of new homes in North East Thatcham equivalent to the size of Hungerford would have a huge impact on not just the lives of Thatcham residents, but also all of West Berkshire. A timely example being the traffic chaos in Newbury at this morning's rush hour. Being the portfolio holder for finance, I now know that all our finances are dependent upon building new homes or council tax revenue. We haven't built enough houses in the past across West Berkshire, and we're now playing catch up. If we don't adopt this local plan, the consequences of losing control of where and how houses are built in West Berkshire would be catastrophic. For example, in excess of £10 million of lost community infrastructure levy, building standards for affordable housing, green energy efficiency regulations to help mitigate fuel poverty and minimise the environmental impact of these new homes. My vote in favour is with a very heavy heart. However, my head knows I have no choice but to do so. It is the least worst option for the residents of West Berkshire.
Councillor Cottam.
Thank you, Chairman. I shall be brief, as many of my points have already been made. As a ward member for Thatcham North, I feel that as the local plan stands, it will have a very adverse effects on our residents. The extra traffic alone will swamp our local road structure and put our community facilities near to breaking point. It is so flawed, I feel my voice and vote has to be heard. Objection to it. May it never be said that I failed to represent my local people. I went out and many occasions, schools and on knocking on doors, and I was told, let's not, as I said, this is not where we should be. It was forced through to the middle of COVID. There were no public discussions. I managed to get it on South Today, but that was about it. Where were the local consultations? Virtually none. Well, really, Marcus. I went to there was a meeting at, Regent's Hotel? And I brought up all the objections there and they were totally ignored. So I don't feel at the moment I can support this plan as it is. Thank you.
Councillor Reid.
Thank you, Chair. I'd like to take this opportunity to thank all those who contributed to the King's Council Opinion Fund, particularly Thatcham Town Council and also Midgham Parish Council, who made generous donations, but also all the private residents of Bucklebury, Stanford Dingley, Midgham, Woolhampton and Coldash, who made significant contributions. Sadly, the result is not what we wanted as an opinion, with the King's Council giving no persuasive grounds to warrant a challenge. However, I would like to say again, this is a dreadful plan. This is a dreadful plan. Those are the words of Alderman Graham Pask, twice leader of the Conservatives and chair of the council, regarding SB 17 North East Thatcham, one of the strategic parts of this local plan. This new town, stretching from the edges of Coldash, running along the south of Upper Bucklebury and deep into Midgham Parish in my ward. The development will tarmac over 5 precious and important gullies, leaving important ecological corridors between the Pang Valley, Bucklebury Common and the wetlands of Midgham Marshes and the Cannock Valley. It is good that this administration will have a strategy to make the best of a bad hand, or to use a rugby analogy, a complete hospital pass from the previous administration. Rushed through when their canvassing data would have shown them the electorate were not happy with their performance and lack of strategy, and were about to remove them from leading the council. As the leader of the opposition, Councillor McKinnon has said in this chamber before, the electorate is never wrong. The residents of the ward will be looking to the council on the inspector's words in his report for their meaningful community engagement. And I'll be asking to see a detailed community engagement plan on assumption the majority vote this evening. The residents will be looking to answers to many questions, including where is the relief route to prevent the rat runs through the villages who already have significant speeding issues? What guarantee is that neither Birdwood nor Thatcham Health Centre will close to move to the new primary healthcare centre, leaving Thatcham no better off and putting increased pressure on Chapel Road surgery? What assurance is there that the green space with the red line within the red line of the settlement boundary won't be built on by the developer? I have many other questions in here, but I can see I'm running out of time. In my ward, Midgham Parish itself will increase by 275%, assuming the average housing density of this development. That is not in keeping with why people love living in West Berkshire. It is not reasonable or sustainable under any measure. This is a dreadful plan, but has to be made good. I will not be voting for the local plan because of SB 17 North East Thatcham and its impacts on the residents in my ward. Thank you, Chair.
Councillor Martha Vickers.
Thank you, Chair. I just have a very simple and I think uncontroversial comment about the plan. Having served on the very worthwhile scrutiny task group Health in New Developments with other members of this council, I'm very pleased to see that there is a policy included in the plan on health and well-being. But I'd just like to add that if this is going to be implemented effectively, we will need to make sure that there is appropriate training for those members of the planning committee. That is all I wish to say. Thank you.
Councillor McCann.
Thank you, Chair. This is a first for me on many occasions, for many reasons. It's the first time I've spoke formally in this council, and it's going to be the first time I vote against a Liberal Democrat plan, because it will become a Liberal Democrat plan if it's passed here this evening. It won't be a Tory plan. They can sit over there, sneer and snigger as much as you like. That's all you need to do, because the public will see that you have failed to learn the lesson of 23. Excuse me, one person at a time. I didn't interrupt you. You failed to learn the lesson of 23. When you get arrogant and when you get cocky, the electorate kick you out. That's what's happened. That's what's happened. As the last person elected on this council, we marched the streets of Thatcham North East saying we'll do everything in our powers to try and prevent it, but we will not break the law. We will not break the law. We will go for King's Council. We'll do everything in our powers. But no, the Tories sit there, snigger and sneer, and the public should watch and learn the lesson that you lot are no better than you were 2-3 years ago. You sit there like Junus with the Greek god.
I'm really sorry. I'm really sorry.
Councillors, can you please stick to an argument, councillors?
I don't think,
It's
and
getting beyond.
other things
Thank
is
you.
very aggressive.
You wish to continue, Councillor McCann?
Yes,
please, let's be respectful across the floor.
Thank you. Like the Greek god Junus, you face north and face south, but you never look at the present. Don't interrupt me while I'm interrupting you, please. Thank you very much. You don't see the present. You're too busy sniggering and sneering. The Greens over there are no any better, because they're actually throwing out a whole bunch of social housing, and environmental policies that could actually enhance the rest of this community. Not all of the plan is bad. Not all of it is good. I particularly don't like my patch. I will vote against it, as I promised the residents. But you lot should be ashamed of yourself. And the residents should see you have learnt nothing in 2 years.
Councillor Dick.
I shall not lower myself to comment on what we've just heard. We're here to talk about a local plan. I am disappointed. I've come along to listen. I was hoping for strong leadership and guidance. The whole district is watching. I studied ancient history when I went to university, along with Greek and Latin. I've had enough of ancient history. I've just heard a rehash of ancient history, but not the history that I've read or remember. Blame the previous administration. Blame the Labour government. And even, it's not our plan. Now, if all of those things are true, what's the obvious, sensible, logical conclusion? Oh, and sorry, we're a bit frightened of the government. They've sent us a letter. They might do stuff. So let me come back to why we're here, and that's to look after our residents. My colleague here and I share a ward. We are fortunate. We are fortunate. And Cold Ash, and in this very chamber, all of you lauded Cold Ash for their plan, their neighbourhood plan, as you did more recently for Hungerford. Great stuff. Somebody even said this will look after Hungerford for years to come. The ink wasn't dry on Cold Ash's plan when it's been completely ripped up. Now, you can, oh, sorry, we blame people. You can blame the inspector, but actually, if you are people of principle, and I'd like to think that I am, I'm going to stand by my residents and the parish council that worked so hard with our encouragement to produce a plan. I personally am going to take a principled view about this plan. I'm going to vote for what the residents in my ward want, and I'm going to vote against this plan. And I hope there are many people in this chamber who have similar principles. We're about to find out. Thank you.
Councillor Stewart.
Good evening. Thank you, Chairman. Good evening to MHCLG as well. Lovely of you to join us. I'm not going to do any finger pointing. You know, I'm all about the residents and I won't be making any political points, I don't believe. Some of what I'm going to say today is the same as I said at the meeting in November last year. And in fact, some of it will be very similar to what Councillor Taylor has already said. That's because for me and my residents, nothing really has changed since then. In my opinion, and that of over 1,700 people on the petition, Councillor Taylor, I've just checked, recently shared their concerns on the inclusion of land east of Pinson's Lane in the local plan. We all believe that this is not right. And should any development go ahead, it is sure to have a negative impact on the residents of Tilehurst, Thiel, Calcutta and Ford's Farm. Pinson's Hill has been the subject of a long and hard-fought battle to retain this natural and wild open space and to prevent housing development on this piece of land. At least the inspector has recognised this, but unfortunately has chosen to ignore it. The inspector has instead decided that the site represents a rare opportunity to provide a significant number of new homes on the edge of the eastern urban area, with good access to services and facilities in a highly constrained part of the district. An interesting choice of words, highly constrained, because anyone who lives in this area will know that our access to GP and healthcare service is already highly constrained, that our road networks and bottlenecks and frequent traffic problems around the Sainsbury's Retail Park, IKEA and Junction 12 of the M4 mean our access to those very services and facilities the inspector mentions can often be highly constrained also. With another 138 potential dwellings in this area, I wonder where we go from highly constrained, maybe to entirely contained, when none of us can gain access to the M4 junction or the retail park or indeed the new homes that would have just been built due to gridlock traffic. In this part of Tilehurst, Calcutta and Ford's Farm, we are very lucky to have really beautiful public park areas, such as Linear Park, which are maintained and kept in great condition. But looking for a wild natural space is more of a challenge, and one that you can walk in freely and away from traffic is tricky to find. Pinson's Hill provides that opportunity perfectly. The paper before us suggests that the establishment of community parkland in Pinson's Lane would provide significant public benefits to the existing community. How ironic, because that's exactly what Pinson's Hill already provides now, especially and even better without 138 houses built on it. I am extremely disappointed that we are here yet again, and I will represent my residents, and for all those reasons, I will not be supporting the adoption of this local plan. Thank you.
Councillor Shakespeare.
Thank you, Chairman. I'm from Pangbourne, as you can probably tell from the accent. and we're a very small but very perfectly formed little place. The local plan adds just 25 homes to our village. And I think, listening to everybody's contributions tonight, I'm the only councillor who welcomes homes being built in his ward. We have a fantastic primary school that is only 75% capacity. And we need more young families and more people to come to our wonderful village and to keep our village vibrant. One of our, on this side of the chamber, one of our big priorities is for vibrant villages. I have kids and I've worked with kids in Pangbourne for the last 15 years. I want them to be able to live in the village. I want them to be able to live in West Berkshire. They have to live somewhere. There has to be houses. Yeah. I fear that people listening to this debate may think that we oppose all new houses, all new development. I've heard nothing but but sort of opposition to it. I think if more of these developments, however, please, I think if more of the developments that have been put forward were of the scale and of the size and the type that I hope to be able to have in Pangbourne, I hope to be able to have affordable homes that families can live in, we'd have more consensus. And if more had been built over the last few years, maybe we wouldn't be in this position now. As has been pointed out, we've been forced to adopt this plan by central government. And I, as someone, a novice to planning, and I perfectly state I am not a planning expert, and I defer to my colleagues who are. It came as a massive surprise to me, and it's come as a massive surprise to many residents that central government can enforce this plan on us. So I suggest, and I appeal to all residents that this has come as a surprise, that that central government can interfere in local government to such an extent that in the next general election, they think very carefully who they vote for. They think very carefully who's done things to reform planning, who's reforming planning now. And they look very carefully at various parties' plans for localism, for devolved government, for decisions being made at a very local level. And they make their choice based on that. Just reflecting on the start of the debate, I have the dubious honour of being called a liar by Councillor McKinnon on Twitter. It is true, it's in writing, Councillor McKinnon. And it is true, and I'll very happily submit it to the chair, and I hope that Councillor McKinnon would withdraw that. I don't hang out on Twitter very much. I find it a place full of unpleasant, braying right-wing bullies. So I try and avoid it. I absolutely not. Would you categorise yourself as that, Councillor McKinnon? Oh, certainly. Well, that's wonderful. Twitter is quite a terrifying place. Recently, Kemi Badenoch, the Conservative leader, explained to right-wing ideologue Jordan Peterson who the Lib Dems were. She said, oh, they're not too big on Twitter. They just work in the community. We just work in the community. That's why I'm proud to be a Lib Dem. And that's why I'm proud that despite this plan being enforcing us, I'm very proud of what we'll do to mitigate it. I'm proud of what we'll do to make it a success for our residents.
Councillor Brooks.
Thank you, Chairman. This situation we find ourselves in tonight is about managing risk. A risk of supporting a plan, and frankly, a lot of people are against, or opposing it, voting against it, and running the risk of developments without managed control and proper planning gain. That is what we in power have to consider. Councillor Dick talks about we got a letter, as if having got the letter, we collapsed. On the 25th of April, I got a letter from Matthew Pennycook, MP, Minister of State for Housing and Planning. He reminded us the direction made in December 2023 by the then Housing Minister instructs your authority not to take any steps to withdraw the plan. No equivocation there. Couldn't read between any lines, clear as clear. These directions remain in place. And in fact, we were contacted today by MHCLG with an inference that if we were minded to withdraw or vote against the plan tonight, they might be emailing the chairman in the course of this council meeting to instruct us what to do. And they end up by saying, consequently, I expect that the council will now take all the necessary steps to ensure that this plan is taken forward to adoption. There ain't a lot of equivocation in that. For the avoidance of doubt, I can read that English as well as anybody else. So we are faced with a Ministry of Housing saying, you better adopt this plan. What choice have we got? Hobson's choice? Now, we were given Hobson's choice by the outgoing Conservative administration, who reverted to type. In the 70s and 80s, they carpeted Thatcham with hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of houses. You know, Councillor Jeffrey, you know, Councillor Cotton. And they done it again on their way out. They alighted on this plan for 2,500 houses in Thatcham, and the cynicism to sit there and now say it's our plan, the cynicism and the breathtaking hypocrisy is stench that gets in my nostrils. It really does. The breathtaking hypocrisy. Now, look, I've got 35 seconds. People need houses. The district needs houses. People need homes. And it is emotive where they end up. But there are people who don't want these homes, but have children who want to live in this district and struggle to do so. We need houses. This ain't where we would have put them, but now we are going to vote for the plan. We're going to make sure we get the best deal in infrastructure, master planning for the residents. That's our job now. That's the risk mitigation we move into. Thank you, members.
Are there any more hands? Are there any more people wishing to speak? Councillor.
Thank you, Chairman. Councillor Vickers. I look across the other side of the room and I can see at least two people who were the first time occupants of homes in North Thatcher.
Yes.
So let's not be too brutal on the development that's happened over the years.
Homes.
Lovely homes.
Lovely homes,
Yeah.
indeed, indeed. When you were in opposition, Liberal Democrats, you had the luxury of making promises without any danger of being held to account. And you promised voters that you would scrap the flawed plan. Well, you've...
You know what they did?
Did they?
Take all available action to
Did they?
scrap it, I think, or fix it. Something
Something like that. That's what they meant, wasn't it?
That's what they meant.
That's what they meant. Okay, yeah. Okay. So you meant that you would scrap the flawed local plan.
They did.
And you failed in that, didn't you?
They did.
And it occurs to me that if you felt that our plan was so flawed, then yours must be doubly so. And this is a plan, of course, that was worked upon by your plan was worked on by the same officers as worked on ours and developed it. So I really don't understand why it's so much better than what we produced in our turn. And I've heard about the risks associated with not having a plan. And that's exactly the position that you have put us in by the dither and delay that you brought about.
Dither and delay.
That you brought
The Lib Dem way.
about when you introduced your failed wheeze to pull back the plan because of this and because of your failure to acknowledge the risks you were taking, risks that will affect our communities for decades to come.
Reckless.
Now, members who support this motion today are in effect rewarding this administration for your irresponsible behaviour.
Yeah.
That's never a good idea. And in spite of my fundamental desire to see a plan that we can all work together, I will be voting against this adoption of the plan review because you should not be rewarded for your irresponsible behaviour.
Disgrace.
Councillor Bennyworth.
Thank you, Chairman. The administration, Chairman, appears to be reaping the rewards of playing politics with planning, leaving the fallout to the good people of West Berkshire. In honouring an election pledge of fixing the flawed local plan, I'm sure the administration will now only be too happy to inform the residents around Pinson's Hill and Coldash that this is a job well done, as well as those from North East Thatcham. Their prize, a further 1,000 houses, a Pyrrhic victory indeed. I've had the good fortune, members, to serve as a member of the Western Area Planning Committee, even acting as its chairman some while ago. And I fully understand the importance of this council having an adopted local plan, and this being a plan-led planning authority. However, one that foists 24 travellers' pitches around the residents, on the residents in a corner of my ward, Enbourne, with spurious need shown at best, is not in the interests of the community, and I will be strongly considering my position when it comes to the vote this evening. Thank you very much, Chairman.
Are there any more? Councillor Coyle.
I'd just like to make an observation. I really respect the considered remarks that people on both sides of the chamber have made on behalf of their constituents in their individual wards who are facing some, we've heard really quite dreadful development. So Councillor Stewart and Councillor Taylor and people on this side who've made the comments that they've made about in Thatcham and in Midgham. What I don't respect is Councillor Bowick standing there and saying that in spite of the fact that he accuses us of being reckless, he's now going to vote against this plan in spite of in spite of everything. Is that not the worst kind of party politicking?
Point of order, Chairman. I believe that Councillor Coyle just said that she did not respect Councillor Bowick, which would be a grave breach of the Code of Conduct.
I don't think she said she didn't respect him. She respected a particular thing that he said as not being respectful.
To apologise for the way I worded it. I clearly meant I didn't respect the position that you were putting forward, Councillor Bowick. I meant no disrespect to you as an individual, okay, but I don't respect your position.
Point of order, Chairman. I respect every political position in this chamber, even if I disagree with it, because I respect every member in this chamber, and I think we would all do well to remember that.
What a fine, upstanding.
That's you, Councillor McKinnon. I really appreciate that. Thank you. Are there any more speakers? Councillor Oloko.
Thank you, Chair. When I first became a councillor, I was stood in support of Pinson's Hill, and my position has not changed. And my position has not changed because that's the wish of the residents and the people that voted for me. So I cannot in any way do anything but do the wish of the people who voted for me. Not only that, when you actually go to Pinson's Hill, you can't understand how that is going to work. That's a practical aspect of it. It's not about numbers. It's not about profiling. It's about actually going to the place and try to visualize how it's going to work. 138 homes, an average of 2 cars, that's 276 cars coming in. You're going to remove all that greenfield, which is supposed to be good for biodiversity, for all this biodiversity and all these issues about green. You're going to remove it and you're going to put concrete on it, which totally runs counter to the principle of environment friendly. So I do not understand how that got into the plan, but that's a different ballgame. But as far as I'm concerned, I cannot do anything but vote for the wish of the people. And that's why I'm voting against this. Thank you.
Councillor Wollaston.
Thank you, Chairman. Councillor Shakespeare may be surprised in the wild west of West Berkshire, Lambourne, which I represent, has 65 units already allocated in the plan. I'm involved in the Lambourne development plan. We've had numerous consultations and my residents are actually supportive. They want affordable housing. Indeed, we have identified further sites which could add a further 30 or 40 units up until 2041. I oppose Pinson's Hill as well, but we need housing in West Berkshire. I will probably very reluctantly vote for this with my nose firmly held. The reason is that those of us on our planning committees know the impact on the planning balance and the attraction of new applications by developers. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Wollaston. It's Councillor Somner.
Thank you, Chairman. I find myself in a very difficult position this evening. Because as you well know, over those 3.5 years, I was the portfolio holder that was pushing forward the plan that you believe was flawed. I believe officers know what they're talking about. That's probably where we differ. I did have a lovely speech written, but software being what it is. So, you're fun over there. Yes, I know. Unfortunately, I was scribbling through it as I was typing it out. Schoolboy error. So what do we have? We have a plan which, as far as we're concerned, as far as most of us in this room are concerned, is worse now than it was when it was first submitted. Councillor Macro made some very good points earlier. He did. I absolutely agree with you, sir. You did say many times that you were against several of the development sites. And in fairness, those conversations, those cross-party conversations, aided the changing of the plan that was going to be going forward to a 1,500 volume in Thatcham and to no Pinsons. That's not where we are now. So it's difficult to say that it's all our fault. It isn't all our fault. We had grown-up conversations that made decisions about what was in front of us with masses of evidence to support it. I can't remember all the things that went into the public domain, but I do remember several buses worth of length of documentation, and I'm sure, Chairman, you will also remember that. Let's be honest, when we talk about Pinsons, we're talking about a site that was suggested to be developable. The land probably is developable. But when it went through Eastern Area, and then when it went through district, it was rejected. It wasn't rejected on the land, it was rejected on the highways. You can't increase the highways that are leading up to that land, ergo, it's landlocked. That isn't going to change. God forbid, the poor people that live on there, and Councillor Oloco was right with the volumes that he's talking about in traffic movements, are now going to be forced to join that mass of IKEA, which I also objected to when it came forward, by the way, just for complete record. And we have enough problems in that area of the world as it is. 57 years, coming up to 58. That's how long I've lived in Tylehurst and Calcutta. Apart from a few months living over in Caversham, I am born and bred. I've seen the changes that have taken place. I live in the fields I used to look at. I remember watching the cows at Turnham's farm when it was a working farm. That was a long time ago. And things change and people want houses and they want the infrastructure and they deserve the infrastructure that goes with it. We've got to provide some of that and we've got to recognise the good things that are in this plan. But it's not all about pointing fingers and blame. Thank you, Chairman.
I see no more hands. So before I invite the seconder in this debate, Councillor Pemberton, to speak, I have my own contribution to make. Now, I've been involved in the making of this local plan since May 2019 until I handed over the planning portfolio at last May's annual council meeting. I was also involved in the local plan adopted in 2012, which this evening we're asked to replace. And until 2016, I was involved in research and lecturing on aspects of national planning policy for 20 years. This could be the last local plan of West Berkshire District. Our successors will probably be working on the Ridgeway local plan and within the context of much changed national planning legislation. The Planning and Infrastructure Bill now going through Parliament could remove almost all our powers as elected representatives in our wards to make decisions on how this and future local plans are managed, drastically reducing the powers of planning committees. I hope we all agree and that the LGA is strongly lobbying for this strand of the bill to be softened. The Council's Planning Committee, The Council's Planning Committee members are not NIMBYs, and personally I use my member call-in powers as much to block refusals by officers as to stop approvals. I'm not talking about where major housing development should go, but whether minor development, particularly in the villages, seems to do no harm to our overall local plan and should be allowed. That leads me into my comments on the local plan before us today, addressed as much to our friends listening in from Whitehall as to our local audience. I represent a ward that is almost entirely within the North Wessex Downs national landscape and am this council's representative on the partnership. Indeed, I'm its vice chairman. In my ward, we have no new major development in the plan and Hungerford's NDP includes no fewer new homes than this plan expects it to. But rural villages in any protected landscape like North Wessex Downs need to remain viable, sustainable, socially and economically. It is their communities that do most to protect our precious landscape. And tomorrow morning, I chair a working group meeting in the North Wessex Downs office near Hungerford, aiming to scrutinise the final draft text of our new 5-year management plan and then recommend it to the partnership, this council amongst it, which itself meets to approve it. The partnership itself meets to approve the document for publication on the day before our next scheduled full council on the 17th of July. Now, the partnership recognises that villages in this area need more truly affordable homes for the local workforce. I commend the whole set of development management policies in this local plan to you, although I'm as unhappy as my colleagues about parts of it. I confidently forecast similar years of delay on North East Thatcham that we've had on Sandalford. But I'll leave you with this final thought. With Ridgeway Council, the North Wessex Down will only be 25% of our area, not 75%. How about a national park being its own local planning authority? Leave you with that thought. So now, on conclusion of the debate, I will ask Councillor Pemberton to second the motion.
Yes, thank you, Chairman. Members, I'm going to be absolutely frank about this. As the ward member for Thatcham West, this plan has much to commend it, but I hate the site allocation in Thatcham North East itself. Now, given that I'm seconding this motion tonight, it's obviously clear which way I'm planning to vote, but it still puts me in a very difficult position because as a Thatcham West member, I must listen to the views of my residents when they say that they don't want 2,500 new homes effectively bulldozing through the green space of Bucklebury. And those residents could not have been clearer time and again when we've spoken to them and consulted. They've told us that they don't want this large built-up space bolted onto the side of the existing town. Thatcham is a town with about 26,500 people, 26,500 people living in it, with a further 6,000, if not more, should Thatcham, if and when Thatcham North East goes ahead. So anybody who tries to argue that this won't have an impact on local infrastructure clearly don't understand Thatcham. So I ask, will this future development be adjacent to Thatcham but not of Thatcham? Will these residents feel integrated into the existing town? How easy will it be for them to access services and have their concerns really been listened to? But then I look at this from an economic development perspective in the very portfolio which I am responsible for. And I can see the financial benefits in the form of SIL contributions, increased council tax revenue, investment into Thatcham, complementing and feeding into the wider and longer term aspirations that we have for the town. I'm grateful in particular to Thatcham Town Councillor Simon Pike, who represented Thatcham Town Council during the review hearings. He was instrumental in carving out concessions in the form of a master planning process underpinned by a supplementary planning document, ensuring that the necessary resource and emphasis is given to the required services, whether that's open spaces, whether that's facilities, whether that's community use, green infrastructure, buffer zones, accessibility, active travel, the list goes on. On a practical level, this is an opportunity for the residents of Thatcham to get involved with that master planning process. And I'm speaking to those residents directly now and saying to them, this isn't something that's being done to you. It's something which we want you to be involved in creating. Now, despite Councillor McKinnon and Councillor Bowick's interesting recollection of history, everybody on this side of the chamber knows the reasons why we're at this point and how we got here. It's been clear for some considerable time that there's no rewind button and no ability to turn back the clock and reassess the process by which individual sites were included within the plan. Councillor Somner is absolutely right. This is not about blame. This is not about blame. It's about stating the facts. And the facts are that we were told by a Conservative minister that we couldn't withdraw the plan. Now being
system is exactly the posting system. So when I was an Apple.
Didn't realise my words had that much of an effect.
You can still get 20 seconds more.
I want to be clear what happens if we don't adopt this plan tonight. We have a district with no plan at all, development by appeal, potentially poor quality housing without the safeguards, design codes and planning policies written into any application which comes before our officers. Not just in Thatcham North East, but anywhere else that developers spot for potential development in the absence of a 5-year housing supply. Not just Thatcham North East, as I say, but Pinson's Hill, Enbourne, Cold Ash, there are other examples too. I'm not willing to risk that, even if the situation has not been of the Liberal Democrats making. And to Councillor Dick, you know, you talk about the importance of what your residents want, and that is quite valid and proper. It absolutely is. But, you know, often in politics, you have to make difficult decisions. That's why residents elect us. We should vote on an issue of this importance according to our view of the best local interest. And if I no longer give my own residents the benefit of my judgment and simply follow their orders, that's not leadership. I personally shall be voting with my conscience content in this vote tonight. And if there are members here planning to vote against, and we've heard them speak, and this proposal does not carry, I would say this to you directly. When we see what unfolds hereafter, as we move forward without the necessary policies in place for the sustainable, high-quality homes that we desperately need, I hope that your own consciences remain equally content. So it's with great reluctance that I will be voting to adopt this local plan tonight. Thank you, Chairman.
Members, just a minute. I have an announcement to make. There was an interruption there. That was Councillor Langford attempting to speak, but unfortunately she only put in the request after the seconder had started to speak. So it is not, unfortunately, within standing orders, that she can speak. I regret that. So I now move on to Councillor Gaines to address any points raised during the debate, conclude the debate.
Thank you, Chairman. I'm not going to attempt to try and answer all of the points raised this evening. There were far too many. I'd like to start with Councillor McKinnon. Just to say that we didn't say we would fix the plan. We said we'd do everything possible to fix the plan. But apart from that comment, can I speak, Councillor Burke? Thank you. You've had your time. You've had your time. But apart from that, all he seemed to do was attack us on our election campaign. So I don't think there's anything more to add to his item. Councillor Marsh, the plan does give us the security of green and blue policies. So if you do vote against this plan, as you seem to want to do, there is no protection against speculative development. Yeah. If you look at the actual plan, you'll see that DM5 is environmental nuisance and pollution, DM6 is water quality, DM7 is water resources and waste management, DM8 is air quality, DM9 is conservation areas. That, to me, is very much an environmental plan. Councillor Taylor, the plan cannot be amended. We've tried to withdraw it. We can't amend it. We are where we are. What I have done, though, is I've asked the Executive Director for Planning whether there was anything, whether we could do an SPD for Pinson's Hill. That is not possible because it isn't in the policy. However, we could ask the developer to work with us on a plan in conjunction with the community to try and get the best possible thing for Pinson's Hill. That's my thing. Councillor Codling mentioned that the sites have been identified, and she also mentioned the fact that they've still got to go through planning. So everything has still got to go through planning, irrespective of whether it's been identified or not. Councillor Dick, we are not frightened of the government. We are doing what we're told to do by the government. I want to ensure that I also want to ensure the residents of West Berkshire are protected against poor quality speculative development, which we definitely get if we do not have a plan. Councillor Sumner, I never accused the officers of writing this plan. What I said was actually it was the Conservatives that wrote this plan. We know, you know, I know that officers facilitate members' wishes. They do not make decisions.
Point of order, Chairman. I'm sorry.
I would not suggest this is down to officers.
I'm sorry. That is not what I said. What I'm saying is the officers are the experts and they are the ones that provide the evidence. That is not what you've just reflected.
You told me, you said that I was blaming the officers for that plan, and I was not.
Let's move on, please. Yeah. You can read the transcript later. It's all recorded.
Councillor Bennyworth, you mentioned travelling community. It was actually the show people's community, not the travelling community. Thank you. That's all I've got to say. Thank you, Chairman.
Councillor Brooks.
Thank you, Chairman. I'll be calling for a named vote. I'm sure I'll get support for that.
Three.
I need 3 members to indicate support. That's no problem there. Right, thank you. I would have been one of those if you hadn't all got your hand up first. It's going to be fairly close, I think. So can we conduct a named vote, Mrs. Clark? We clear what we're voting on first. The recommendation is, and I'm going to take the whole set of 7 together. Are we happy with that? Not going to have separate votes on all 7 items in the recommendation. So does anybody, well, I would refer you to the papers. It's quite a long set of recommendations. So it's paragraph 2 in your agenda papers near the top.
Thank you, Chairman. Members in alphabetical order, and I'll ask each member to confirm when their name is called, whether they are for, against, or wish to abstain from the vote. So commencing with Councillor Adrian Abbs.
For.
Councillor Dennis Bennyworth.
Abstain.
Councillor Dominic Bowick.
Against.
Councillor Jeff Brooks.
For.
Councillor Patrick Clark.
For.
Councillor Heather Codling.
For.
Councillor Martin Colston.
For.
Councillor Jeremy Cottam.
Against.
Councillor Ian Cottingham.
For.
Councillor Laura Coyle.
For.
Councillor Paul Dick.
Against.
Councillor Billy Drummond.
For.
Councillor Denise Gaines.
For.
Councillor Stuart Gawley.
For.
Councillor Clive Hooker.
Against.
Councillor Owen Jeffrey.
For.
Councillor Paul Kander.
Against.
Councillor Ross McKinnon.
Against.
Councillor Alan McCrow.
Against.
Councillor David Marsh.
Against.
Councillor Tom McCann.
Against.
Councillor Jeff Mays. Councillor B. Loco.
Against.
Councillor Eric Pattenden.
For.
Councillor Justin Pemberton.
Voting for.
Councillor Vicky Poole.
For.
Councillor Christopher Reid.
Against.
Councillor Matt Shakespeare.
For.
Councillor Richard Sumner.
For.
Councillor Stephanie Stevenson.
For.
Councillor Joanne Stewart.
Against.
Councillor Louise Sturgis.
For.
Councillor Clive Taylor.
Against.
Councillor Martha Vickers.
For.
Councillor Tony Vickers.
For.
Councillor Howard Wollaston.
Against. Sorry. For.
We'll take your first answer. If you don't mind, really.
It wasn't better than the balance.
Yeah. Thank you, Chairman. I can confirm that there are, with 22 votes for the proposal, 13 against and 1 abstention, the proposed motion has been carried.
Colleagues, on the whole, I think that was a very good debate. Thank you very much. A most important motion has now been carried, and we can move on to the next local plan.
You formally leave now.
I close the meeting.
Thank you.